Okay, let me do the countdown. So we've got the weird drink stuff at the beginning, then we have to go into Final Fantasy V, and then we're done. We need to pick which game's next. ZP, which is next?
It's the Final Fantasy V anime.
Oh. Is it? Where is that available? Yeah.
You're going to have to get it on YouTube because the rights expired and they didn't pick it up. So it's actually in the public domain.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Great.
Literally, they let the rights expire and it is in public domain. So this is not piracy.
It was deemed literally worthless.
There's not a lot of the Final Fantasy franchises in the public domain, but this one is.
It's the Steamboat Willie of the Final Fantasy series.
Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that big Reno Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. Time, once again, to continue the final Five-stasy. It's time for the third and final episode of our coverage of Final Fantasy V. We will rank it on our single definitive list of all Final Fantasy properties. At first, it was just mainline games, but then someone suggested we should play the trading card game, and now we're in this, and it's getting worse all the time. So, to join me on this terrible quest, on this burden that we have undergone, I'm joined, as always, by Chris ZombiePie Redacted.
Hello, everybody. How are we all doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited. This is a good Final Fantasy game, and we're going to rank it.
Quick thing, I know we haven't talked hoops in a while, Gino, but I've been on the Giant Bomb Discord a lot, and someone's reminded me that on my 2019 Game of the Year blog, I said, if the Sacramento Kings make the playoffs, I will literally eat my own cock and balls. So I guess you and Pete have to hold me accountable for that.
They might make the playoffs.
It's wild. And also I came into contact with a distressed Golden State Warriors fan who's come to the existential realization that Andrew Wiggins might be worthless.
Oh, wow. Who could have thunk it? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what he does with a year coaching. We are also joined for this Final Fantasy V excursion by Jeff Rud. Hello.
Hello. Yes, coming to you live here from Ground Zero of the COVID-19 virus. I'm Jeff Rud. Just receiving reports, the major shootout of the local Fred Meyer over the toilet paper and the hand sanitizer over there. Local barista Wave working at the Starbucks that isn't quite a Starbucks yet, but is being turned into a Starbucks, described the scene as Bernie or bust. Gino?
I wanted. Well, thank you for that breaking from the ground of the coronavirus. As someone who tried to go to a supermarket today, it's wild out there. Stay safe, folks.
Thanks. Yeah, the helicopter be evacuating me in a second. Just need to find a way to turn off this 1 hour helicopter noise loop. That's a really dumb gag. Yeah, it was a really fun.
You had
time.
an idea and you executed on it. And
where'd you get the helicopter sounds?
I went to YouTube.com and typed in helicopter.
Remember, Gino, when I played a random just elevator music while trying to convince you that the next community endurance run should fund a Ponzi scheme?
Yes, I remember you did that. Is that how you did it as well?
Yeah, basically.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a really good time for my wife to get a really nice cold suddenly.
Yeah.
It turns out she does not have the hot new disease that's going around. She's just been sick for like a week, so it's been really great.
You know, as someone with decidedly Asian-looking family members and parents, I've never felt so powerful with a grandmother that had a head cold. It's great. She just needs to sneeze and people will literally go the other way. It's awesome.
Yeah, I guess
she literally sneezed in the Walmart and like 3 people just gave us the way. It was awesome.
I work for the first university that is halting all in-person classes in the U.S. as of last Friday, which is cool because it means I might be doing some work-from-home work for about 3 weeks, which sounds kind of cool.
Hopefully it's only 3 weeks.
We'll see. Our governor right now is talking about other measures that might happen. Our governor, who's apparently a snake, but in any case, here we are.
Yeah, Gino, give us. You're now responsible of getting us updates in terms of if you get the PAX pox.
I'm okay. I've been okay. I have no sniffles, no nothing major.
Nice.
I managed to dodge it this year through diligent practices of washing my hands and not touching my face.
And your end of the year, your future predictions that I forced you to make, your E3 prediction might actually happen.
That this is the last E3 or there is no E3?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was going to be the case before there was a pandemic.
Yeah. It's
getting
wild.
Before I would love to continue talking about terrible diseases, but I feel we should talk about something else terrible because I believe you've both brought a clip.
Yep. Let me get it ready. Jeff, you do the preamble real quick.
Sure. Okay, so the preamble for this clip is... what am I doing?
I thought you were drinking garbage again.
Oh, this is a bit. I see.
All right.
Yeah, so the last time we convened... So this is a really funny joke because we're kind of a loose thing that fell off a website called Giant Bomb that started with a podcast where they did fake reviews of drinks. Isn't that funny? Energy drink. So now we're going to do that.
Product.
But we're a standalone product. But anyway, we met on a forum. So blah, blah, blah. Last time we did this, we got clawed up and didn't really enjoy that. I just had a wedding where there was a lot of White Claw that people brought from off-site to consume. It was described as something that should be illegal. But I kind of, that being sort of the de facto standard, and let's say on like a 1 to 5 scale, I found the ones I tried to be like a 3 to a 2. I was kind of curious, like, what else was out there. So I was looking for San Juan branded hard seltzer, which is a local island chain-based seltzer distributor thing up here.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't find that this morning.
Weird.
So when I went to buy more cold medicine, I came upon Bud Light Seltzer, strawberry flavored.
Damn straight.
So here we go. So this is.
So what flavor is yours? Because I also went out and got Bud Light Seltzer.
So this is strawberry.
Okay, I went a little tropical. I got mango.
When I think Budward Light, I think about seltzer and strawberries. Those are the flavors that I associate.
And mango, Gino. I've got mango.
And mango. I think of the breezy islands when I think of...
This has a pretty nice smell so far.
I'm also going to say the smell on mine is decidedly mango. And it doesn't it doesn't smell like medicine.
Yeah, like just on the nose so far, not bad.
Okay.
So far,
this is a
better
25
smell
ounce can.
than White Claw, I would say. Okay. Jeff, cheers.
Cheers.
So, is this drink branded as Bud Light Seltzer, or does it have its own?
Bud Light Seltzer.
Bud Light Seltzer.
Okay, so they are using the Bud Light brand. This is not some, hoity-toity seltzer that they're trying to pawn off on.
100 calories, 5% per can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to try another sip because I have feelings right now.
This is very... Fuck me. Okay, so this is very mild.
Yeah.
It's imagine if they took a LaCroix, like a strawberry flavored LaCroix. Like you can probably kind of imagine that.
Yes.
Make it about 30% less flavorful. And then add just like the slightest is there vodka in here? Is there grain alcohol in here? But like a whisper of it.
Okay.
This is inoffensive. I'm probably going to drink this whole thing in lieu of drinking water because this is basically water.
Oh, of course.
I'm going to say this is better than White Claw. But it still has that problem with White Claw to where I don't know if I like it.
So, first off, how would you number this? So, White Claw, let's assume that the scale is the same between White Claw and Budweiser. Where does it rank? Is it like a 3? Is it a 4? It doesn't sound like it's a 5. Both of you seem...
No.
You're not like
I'm going to
delicious.
give this a 3. It's inoffensive.
I'm going to give Mango a solid 3. I think this is just maybe a bad flavor. Hey, Jeff, it's gluten-free, so that's the good news. Did you notice looking at the label here?
Yeah, malted rice.
It says it's got 0 sugar in it, but one of the ingredients is literally called cold fermented cane sugar. So, what?
That's the alcohol source, presumably, so that's like pretty much all of the sugar in that should have been upconverted in the fermentation process to alcohol.
Yeah, that's the grain part of the grain alcohol.
Yeah. The final ingredient here is malted rice because it's
water. Yeah, you're right. Water, cold fermented cane sugar, natural flavors, cane sugar, citric acid, sodium citrate, and malted rice.
Yeah. That last cane sugar, literally sugar. But yeah, mine's listed as less than 1 gram of sugar on it. So
mine's is less than 1.
2 carbs. 2 carbs per serving. So.
I think I can kind of feel the alcohol part of this maybe a little more pronounced than White Claw, but...
Yeah, like, am I going to recommend this? No. But this is fine. It's fine. It's fine.
So,
it shouldn't have been $3.
TP, did you bring another thing?
So for those that don't know, Lay's is having another potato chip competition where you get to vote on the potato chips.
Oh, God.
And I always have to have the flavors here. They only had 2 of the flavors in the Walmart I was at, and the other one just looked a little too normal. It was called Spicy Taco.
Why do I let these people do this on my show?
So I got the other one that I thought would be a little bit more, let's say, exotic. It's called Wavy Lay's.
What?
Fried green tomato flavored.
Oh, no.
What?
So I'm going to try this. Because when I drink alcohol, I usually want to have something that's a little salty.
You know, when people are drinking on my podcast, what I want them to do is eat chips.
Yeah, right on the mic.
Oh.
Trash.
Oh,
do you mean to tell me that the subtle flavor of the fried green tomato doesn't translate well to a bag of fucking potato chips?
Nah. It tastes like ranch.
Good to know. Move on to your second chip quickly, please. Cleanse your palate with the the Bud Light Seltzer. Can we just stop for a second? Why the fuck did they not come up with a weird brand name instead of Bud Light Seltzer? Do you think people just trust the Bud Light name too much? Like that brand's just too solid?
Well, Gino, as a dirty capitalist who actually follows the market, part of the reason why is that the Bud Light brand and the light beers in particular have across the board been struggling, and many of the long-standing brands might be discontinued within the next couple of years. I think Michelob Ultra, for example, if they don't turn it around within the next 3 or 4 months, they will completely discontinue the brand and the assembly line there. So rejuvenate the brand by putting in a new product that's completely unrelated to it, but will at least buoy that name in the market.
So just come up with a new name. Like White Claw, all of a sudden, is a very popular brand, and it's grain alcohol and water.
So to go back to the potato chips, because this is a Final Fantasy podcast, I would rate this as a solid 2. The problem I have with these is that it says fried green tomato, and I got no tomato flavor on this. Now, there are ketchup-flavored potato chips, which I think have actual tomato flavor to them. It kind of reminds me of that dill pickle-flavored potato chip.
Journalistic integrity question. Have you ever had a fried green tomato?
Yes.
Okay.
It's basically breading with ranch dressing on top.
Yes. So if it's mostly tastes like breading and ranch dressing, I think that's actually pretty accurate.
I was just hoping for a little bit more of a pronounced tomato flavor. Otherwise, these are ranch potato chips.
Okay,
which
move on to your
I'm okay with, but then don't try and bill it as green fried tomatoes.
Okay, now move on to your next potato chip. What is it? What
Actually,
type of
that's
chip
it.
is this? That's it?
It's
Okay.
crispy. It's crispy taco. Oh, sorry. Let me get it. Okay. So it's crispy taco. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and say it looks like they took one of those seasoning packets that you buy in your regular supermarket for making your own tacos at home. It looks like they just dumped that shit on these potato chips.
Oh, that's
right.
probably exactly what they did. Does it taste like tacos?
It tastes exactly like taco seasoning.
Excellent. You heard it here first. The taco one tastes like tacos. The fried green tomato one tastes like ranch. The taco one, I assume, gets a 2 or a 3.
It gets a 2 because I'm
Excellent.
disappointed. I expected more.
I don't know why you would expect anything of the Lay's potato chip challenge, which every
The
year...
Lay's Potato Chip Challenge, it's sponsored by The Voice, thank you very much, and that is a brand that I deeply appreciate. Watch your tongue, young
Now-
man.
Please get your filthy chips and your crinkly thing away from that microphone. Welcome to the show.
You know what, Gino, just because of that, I'm going to brew a cup of coffee.
Don't do that. Just a reminder, you can get in touch
This is
with
a
the show.
podcast about Final Fantasy.
It's a podcast about Final Fantasy V. You can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. That will get you access to our Discord, where you can get these reviews outside of the podcasts, because I can't stop them from posting them. I can, but it would be bad. I shouldn't ban them just because they, like Jeff and ZP, occasionally post food things. So you can get even more food content.
You always make fun of me for the food channel, but literally Jeff has basically ruined the music channel by just constantly posting Viper.
I don't know what that is. I don't click on any of the links in any of the channels anymore.
Yeah, Jeff, why don't you talk about Viper for 5 minutes?
No thanks.
Yeah.
I
Talk
would
to me later.
I would normally do my obsession here, but that was enough. We can get my obsession another podcast. So, when we last left Final Fantasy V, the 5th Final Fantasy, we were in the Moor Forest. We were fighting the remnants of several crystals, and Exdeath showed up, and he murdered one of our team members, which was a real bummer. Galoof is gone, and in his place, Kryl has risen up. And so now we have to take the fight to Exdeath. So, where are we now? What happens after the crystals, y'all?
So, quick thing, just for reference, because I was wondering this. When you fight Exdeath in the forest and eventually in the castle, is it ever explicitly stated until his final confrontation at the end that he is a tree from the Great Forest? Because I kind of got confused about that. It's like, oh, wow, this guy's a tree, I guess.
Yeah, they say that.
What is
I
it
think
when?
I think it's Guido who tells you or Gil, depending on the version you have, the turtle.
Yeah.
So,
I seem to recall he just says that he's from the forest. I guess, I just didn't connect the two to mean that he was an actual goddamn tree.
yeah, Exdeath is a tree, a sacred tree, that had evil spirits sealed in it over generations, and so many evil spirits were sealed in it that it became sentient and evil and a wizard. And so this evil tree wizard gained autonomy, freed itself, and then vowed revenge on the world. And he wants to bring all existence to an end by attaining the power of the void. That is his deal.
It's
It's the
silly.
best.
You know what else is silly? My mom is like an extra-dimensional space alien, and my dad is a scientist, and I am like planning on bringing a meteor to the world to blow up the planet. Like all these are kind of silly. I
Sure.
like that it's like it fits on the back of a business card. Basically, it makes enough sense, but doesn't
Sure.
beat you over the head with its like preciousness over its lore. It's good.
Yeah.
It's something that's good. This game is like very good at throughout, is not beating you over the head with its own lore.
It barely cares. Like it
It
needs,
barely does. Yeah.
It needs to give you just enough lore to get you moving from place to place. It makes all of it so extreme and silly that It's generally enjoyable, but it's here for the systems. It is here for the kind of fun music and lighthearted story. It is not going to tell you. No one's going to be pondering the meaning of existence in Final Fantasy V.
It's not a story worth, for example, Gino, close reading like some of our previous Final Fantasy games.
No, it has no commentaries on much of anything.
Yeah.
Other than maybe some light environmental themes, but yeah, you're right.
The general light environmental themes and the general anime.
Family sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, again, all kind of, like,
Family.
after school specials being kind of glib, but, like,
yes.
operating on that sort of level, like...
Family,
I guess
friendship.
Yeah.
Destiny.
I guess the only other thing I want to mention is the fact that Krill is the worst, and I deeply missed Galoof by, like, the second dungeon, and that's partly because Krill is just not an interesting character other than seeing her funny outfits of the different job classes.
Yeah, she doesn't have very much personality. She doesn't get to have as much wit, and she's not really as developed as Galoof was. The only thing that really stands out about her is, like you said, her outfits are sizably different than all the other characters.
And they're adorable.
They're all
like,
adorable.
the Beastmaster one where she's literally a furry is just the most adorable thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, because she's like a, not maybe a preteen? She's real young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Preteen or a teen, so she gets all the cute outfits. So after Galoof's fall, we go to X-Dex Castle. You can actually pick up an optional summon if you want. I don't know if anyone did that.
I think I got all of them. What is the optional summon in X-Dex Castle?
Carbuncle?
There's Carbuncle in X-Dex Castle, and there's
Right.
also a thing called Shote, I believe. That's another...
It's Carbuncle and... Yeah, it's Carbuncle in our version. Carbuncle was critical for me, especially. Just being able to cast all these buffs using summons meant that I didn't always have to have such a passive job class. I could have like something that had offensive capabilities as well as being able to buff my party. And I think this is when I started to realize that the Summoner is a very good class.
Oh, totally.
When in other versions of Final Fantasy games, the Summoner is sometimes a give or take. There's more of a give or take in that, the Summoner basically uses all of your MP in one battle if you're not careful, which is kind of the case here. But, like, for example, in Final Fantasy IX, if you're using a summon in a random encounter, you're wasting your MP. You basically save those summons for the boss battles. But with the Summoner in Final Fantasy V, I was popping them off like crazy. There's ways to get around the MP requirements even. And yeah, the Summoner ended up being kind of like my heavy hitter in my party. Like, I always had at least one.
Yeah, Summoners in this game are a bit more like a red mage than in others. Like, there's a good number of summons that just give buffs. There's some that do status effects. So you're a little bit more limited than a traditional red mage, but in exchange you get these powerful all-targeting attacks.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No,
Go ahead.
I got nothing really to add. My Summoner was, I had he was white mage, Summoner, time mage, and then I wound up giving him, like, all the levels in Berserker. At some point, but those were the only classes he had. He was just summoning and casting time magic was like all he did.
If there's one thing, and I think Jeff can back me up on this because you ended up getting the optional summons as well. Some of these optional summons are so far removed from the story, it's ridiculous. Like, some of them are even hidden as random encounters in these random forests, and that's just, like, uncalled for in a lot of ways. What was it? Like, Ramune is in a random forest, and then there's one more where you have to, like, go through a dungeon or a cave system to find an isolated forest.
That's Shote.
An island.
That's the summon that I was talking about that you can
Yeah,
get before
it's ridiculous. And the fact that there's nothing that really even hints at their existence is further unconscionable in a lot of ways.
Yep, that's that old school design. So X-Dex Castle is creepy. It's got writhing floors, and it's alive in a lot of ways.
Is this the one that transforms after a while?
Yeah, it starts out looking like a regular
Oh, right.
castle, and then it reveals its true form, and it's all bones and gore.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's
I love the effects, but yeah, you're right. It was kind of like gross to look at. It's like I was watching some sort of like Eldritch abomination in real time. But yeah, it's something that it was interesting in terms of like a story, but I actually feel like the level design in this level was kind of annoying enough to where the grossness kind of overstayed its welcome.
Yeah, and this is one of the only sections of the game where we get lava.
Yes.
Yeah, this is where I started really being thankful that I had gotten Float online. I will say, like, right around where this is sort of like the beginning of the back third of this game that we're in, effectively. And it was around this time I'd kind of, like, perfected my builds, basically, for all my characters. So at this point, like I said, at a time mage summoner, and then the other character, well, let's see, it was a knight, white mage, geomage combination. Oh, and she also had thief. So basically I had a character who, like, for the rest of the game was like, her options were attack, mug, white magic. And she didn't really move off of those for the rest of the game. This was also around the time I got my dual wield rapid fire pretty much finished off. And
Right.
it's funny because, like, I feel like we're going to talk a little bit about, like, what you mechanically do for the rest of this game. But I feel like I did myself something of a disservice, even without necessarily grinding all that much to get it. Because from this point forward for the rest of the game, I had a character that just was a win button. Like, those two abilities combined made most of the rest of this game trivial. Like, I think I died, like, twice. And that was due to some fuckery that we'll get to.
And I'm on the opposite side of Jeff, where I made a lot of mistakes, and as a result, the back half of this game was completely miserable. But we'll talk about it later when we get there. So
We'll get there. So the castle changes, and you roll up to X Death is at the top of it. This is sort of like the capstone for, like, the middle third of the game.
Yeah, so you can get Carbuncle. There's an interesting fight, because if you don't have the ability to petrify Carbuncle, it's a pretty difficult fight. If you do have the ability to petrify Carbuncle, you can one-shot it just by petrifying it immediately. Otherwise, you need to flip between it. It toggles between, I think, magic defense and physical defense, and you need to kind of pay attention to what mode it's in and adjust your attacks depending on it. Then we get a Gilgamesh fight.
correct.
Oh, right.
Always remember to steal from Gilgamesh because you get some really cool stuff from him.
Yeah.
The Genji armor set is very important, especially for the ninja class at the very least. I love the Gilgamesh confrontations. I loved every single one of them. I wish that there was a more visible way in which you could see the conversations, because it just scrolls on top and sometimes too fast for my taste.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I forgot to mention the Gilgamesh fight. There's basically a treasure chest in the middle of a room, and if you don't open it, you won't fight Gilgamesh.
And in the GBA version, it is canonically, they later changed this, but in the GBA version, if you don't open that chest, basically all the further Gilgamesh confrontations don't happen because it's implied that he's still stuck in that chest.
Yep. It's great.
Yeah,
It's great.
I definitely opened the chest. That's wild.
Yeah, you can
Yes.
avoid future Gilgamesh fights by just leaving him stuck in the chest.
It's kind of a shame because there's some cool stuff that happens.
You don't do that because every future Gilgamesh fight is a complete pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we fight X-Death. It's a tough fight. He uses a lot of powerful magic.
This is no joke. This is probably one of the toughest battles in the entire game. And I think this is when I realized that I didn't like some of the mechanics to this game. And we'll talk more about it as we get later down the road. But when you're not able to cheese a boss, or you're not able to cheese a confrontation, I felt like this game really kludged up, or it really became frustrating. especially with this Axe Death battle, because it's kind of in the midpoint of the game. It's a proper climax, but I felt like it was cheap. I felt like certain parts of this battle were just completely cheap. I had it to where basically he KO'd 2 members of my party and then turned the other 2 into zombies, and then that was an instant loss right there, even though I had 2 party members that were technically alive. I had another situation where, like, him casting one version of Earthshaker was just a total party kill. I mean, yes, you can respond to it by casting Float, but then you have to either use a passive slot to be able to cast that spell, or you have a Time Mage, which is a pretty important class, but, I mean, the problem is that you lose an entire slot of offensive output, and as a result, the battle becomes longer.
Yeah, this was the fight that when I was speedrunning this game for the community endurance run, I just ran into a brick wall because there's not a great way to cheese it. You pretty much have to fight X-Death fair and square, and I had been going as fast as I could, and some of my characters were underleveled, and he was just a brick wall. I needed to just run against him over and over and over again until I found a strategy that worked, and I just got some lucky rolls.
Yeah, the combination of a blood sword, another high-level sword, good summons, like, again, like...
Rapid fire.
Yeah, that combination shatters this game for, like, the back third of it. And again, like, I did engage in some, like, I'm gonna AP farm in the spot that is, like, your designated AP farm area for, like, an hour or 2. But I didn't necessarily go out of my way to grind. I just, like, fought every encounter that came to me, like a normal person. And yeah, again, the times I died going forward from this point were basically like gotcha moments.
Yep.
But yeah, so as will be the case for the rest of this walkthrough, and again, I don't want to sound like I am like game expert Jeff here, but I beat all these bosses in one shot.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. If you actually try to break the game and play it straight up, it's not that hard to make your characters overpowered by hybridizing in exactly the way that you said. If you are trying to do some sort of 4-job fiesta or get through it quickly or a low-level run, that's where you need to play in the margins. But it like in Final Fantasy VIII and 7 and some of the other games that we've played, you can just go over the top of everything. You can't just out-level everything. There are some strategies that are very powerful and in a very normal way. It feels like this game has the straightforward... I liken it to like in Magic the Gathering. There's some decks that are just like ramp decks. I'm just going to get a bunch of resources and I'm going to go over the top of everyone. And then there are some approaches where you're an aggro deck, you're trying to kill people very quickly, but you're going to use every ounce of strength you have to win this game, and you'll barely do it. And if you're going to go the ramp approach, it's always there. It's completely available. It's the most straightforward way to play the game, but it's reliable and you won't be frustrated. Whereas playing that razor's edge aggressive strategy will work sometimes, but you need to know what you're doing and you need to be confident in your approach.
And I want to make it very clear, something that I said, I think, on the first podcast, but not the second podcast. I strongly believe in playing these games blind.
Sure do.
I believe in playing these games blind without the help of a guide, which was a problem, which was a real problem. And I know that Gino has always made it clear. It's like, man, dude, and I think you've said this in Discord multiple times. This game is so much more fun if you know exactly how to exploit it. This game is so much more fun if you know how to tease around with its mechanics, which I totally understand where you're coming from. But I also believe that a player should be able to learn organically or on the fly by just learning through experience. And as a result, I would say I had a bad time by a certain point in this game, which, again, we will talk about shortly.
I can't emphasize enough. This game came with a manual with all of the jobs, all of the passive abilities, and I think even like the AP required to learn them. So you actually played this game with less information than anyone else who would have been able to play this. Like, if you bought the game for the Super Nintendo, if you bought it for the PlayStation, if you bought it for the GBA, all of this information would have been available to you. So you played it in a less informed way than someone who just played the game regularly. So I have no problem with going in cold, but if I'm telling you, like, hey, here's this information that the game would have given you, and you're like, no, the game should teach me, the game did. Like, it provided this information.
I
to
looked
the
that
players.
part up, but at the same time, and we talked about it before, like, the process of scanning enemies is really a frustration, constant frustration. The process of, like, figuring out which status ailments work on this guy, like, it's that part of things was constantly, like, I felt like I was banging my head on a wall.
Yeah, I would say that stuff is completely legitimate. Those things not being transparent, like status weaknesses and elemental weaknesses. But I think in terms of planning your jobs and planning what abilities you want, that stuff is readily apparent because it's just kind of given to you.
Yeah, and again, I've just so is that just so is that you know, we realize there's two sides to this coin. I still maintain that Gino played an inferior version of Final Fantasy XII, and his opinion is moot in the ranking of that game.
I don't think it's going to be. I don't see how it would be higher. But the next section that we got to after this segment, after you defeat Xdeath, he merges the worlds. So it turns out the world from World 1 and then Galoof's world were originally one world, and they were separated by magics. And Xdeath uses the power of the void to fuse these two worlds together. And it turns out that, like, there were strings of islands that before kind of strung across the southern hemisphere of the continents that you saw. It's because those string of islands used to be one long chain of land.
And this might be the greatest amount of storytelling and world building the game will do right up until the end of it. But it was nice. It's kind of a disappointment it didn't do more. But, you know, it is what it is, as we say.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think about with this game is once they fuse the worlds together, were these two separate planets, or are these supposed to be separate dimensions?
Yeah, I was super confused about that, too. I was always wondering, like, are these two dimensions, or are these two planets?
Because the game begins with meteors coming from World 2 to World 1 and crash landing, which implies that they're two separate planets.
So what I'm thinking is maybe this is like a Final Fantasy 13 situation where you've got Cocoon and Grand Pulse, and then the culmination of the game is the merging of the two planets. So what I'm saying is that Final Fantasy 13 is actually a sequel to Final Fantasy 5.
That'd be great. That would be great, but I don't think that's what it is. So once you wake up in the fused world, you find Boko, the Chocobo, again. You get to Tycoon
Who's healthy
Castle.
and been banging his girlfriend a lot.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of baby chicks.
No, that's not until later, but yes.
Well,
yes,
yeah, he's got a girlfriend, and he leaves the girlfriend to help Butts and crew. You get to Tycoon Village, or Tycoon Castle, I should say, and there's some fights. There's an antlion that you have to fight.
Super easy.
Super easy.
Yeah, baby.
After that, there's a series of dungeons that heretofore were unavailable. You might have been able to see them in some spots, but you could never get to them. And now you've got to actually deal with them. I forget, what is the MacGuffin you're getting here?
You're getting the lithographs so that you can get the legendary weapons. I will say, though, that World 3, it had been kind of a recurring problem when we were talking about World 1 and World 2, but World 3 is kind of it's the point in which this kind of, I'm not going to say reaches a breaking point, it's just, it kind of drove me crazy. It's like going around in this world, kind of sucks because you don't know where you need to go or what you need to do. And some of the critical places that you need to go, especially dungeons, are not on the map. They're marked on the map with a special color, purple in my case. But they're not like, you can't just click it to where, hey, this is where this is. It's just a dot on the map. And the lack of a mission log in this game really was a constant annoyance for me. Because, like, I didn't know, it took me some time to, like, go to Tycoon, or then the Tycoon Castle, then to a random cave to where I fought a antlion, and then immediately to the Library of Ancients. Like, the sequence of events, it took me some time to figure out. But also, and this is the part of the game that I think I enjoyed the most, you have a lot of free choice in terms of what you do at this point of the game. It basically becomes an open world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a bunch of dungeons that all become available at the same time. There's a bunch of side quests you can do. You don't need to do much of anything in here. Actually, I think you need to get, like, one lithograph.
Yeah. It
forces you to at least go to Earth, yeah.
Yeah, you need to go to the pyramids first to get the Earth lithograph.
But I don't think you need to even cache that lithograph. You can immediately go.
Yeah, that's what I did. So whenever I've speed ran this game, I got the Earth lithograph from the pyramid, and then I immediately went to the end game.
Mm. I mean, but you've at least, Gino, played it to where you've done everything, right? I mean,
not in 15 years.
I can't imagine playing this game. I understand, like, you don't need all of the legendary weapons, but there's so much world building and storytelling just hidden as a result of finding these lithographs, and exploring some of these optional dungeons. Like, there's like a shocking amount of world building and characterization. Like, after you get the second lithograph, you get a quick little cutscene where, like, X-Death, like, has a rousing speech in the interdimensional rift or whatever it's called, and he's like, you are all the people who are condemned here, let us create a world of chaos. Like, they're just quick little cutscenes, but they meant so much in terms of, like, understanding what's happening and, like, what your next steps are.
Yeah, I honestly haven't seen that stuff. I don't think I've ever gotten all of the legendary weapons in this game.
There are a couple of really cool cutscenes at the end. I mean, there's also, like, an optional sequence where you get a flashback with Lena, in which she sees her father. She has a choice. You even have a choice in the game of sacrificing a wyvern to cut out its tongue, or doing the right thing and realizing that her mom has to die. Like, that scene was, like, probably one of the more heady moments in the entire game.
Yeah. And, like, it's a reward for, like, doing all of the stuff, basically. Like, you could say this about every single one of these, like, sort of vignettes in the game. None of them are essential, but all of them are, like, at least good.
Yeah.
Like,
so there's not even just, like, an intrinsic reward in terms of getting new trinkets. Like, you get storytelling to where I was just shocked that, like, these optional bosses, these optional lithographs, they not only gave me cool stuff, but they also added a wholeness to the world that I was not anticipating. So it shocked me. Like, you
what
get
are the
some
vignettes? Lena accepts her mom's death.
Lena sees her mom's death. There's one where you see X-Death basically gaining command of the interdimensional rift. There's another one, I think, where you see... There's one where I think you see Ferris, and she basically refuses to hop on a wyvern, and she learns that she just doesn't like animals. She likes boats. There's another one where you see, I think, Bart gets a quick little cutscene with his, like, dad.
Yeah.
Like, it's little stuff, but it, again, with a game that was made on the Super Famicom, like, they're really cool moments. I don't know, Jeff, am I missing any of this stuff here? Like, I think there's one more. No, wait, that's right. You get Sid. You can re-encounter Sid, and you can learn, like, what he's been doing in between, like, all of these moments.
Oh, yeah. You go down and, like, you discover that under the crescent town area, there's dwarves, and they're clearly like the Final Fantasy 1 dwarves. Basically,
they say hi-oh. They speak exactly like they say tally-o, just like Final Fantasy 9. You know?
Yeah, like I sit here and struggle to cite things, but like the game itself is like kind of slight on how it characterizes all of these characters. And some of the only characterization, I'm going to come up with a new word, that they get was in these like kind of brief, like post-surgery sort of funny things where it'll make you chuckle but not like knock your suture out, basically. You'll just be like, oh, that's cute. It adds to like the hygge, the like cozy feel of the game in a spectacular way. Yeah. Without necessarily being like, man, I can't like, 30 hours in, there's this cutscene that's just, oh my god, like when he stabbed Aerith and then he died. Oh, like no, like not that, but all like, oh, it's pleasant, like all very pleasant.
Yeah, you even get little things like when you fight Bahamut on the Northern Mountain, where like Bahamut talks about like needing to prove yourself, your worth, and like the times that all these characters doubted themselves. It's cool. It's cool. Like this entire sequence, I felt inspired to do a lot of the optional content. I think the only one I avoided was traveling the world with the Chocobo.
Same. Yeah.
Because like, I just can't. I
What does that get you?
I don't even know, because as soon as the guy was like, hey, you could do this, I have a thing. And I was like, no. Whatever you give, like,
I saw the map on the, like, I had to know. So I saw a guide in terms of the map of, like, your route, and it's like, I just looked at it for a quick 10 seconds, like, yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, like, I know, I put that in the same drawer as, like, the optional final, like, endgame bosses. It's just like, I don't need to do everything.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
do Boko all around the world?
Yep, don't need to. Whatever they give me is not worth it.
And I thought some of the mechanics to the different towers were really cool.
Yeah, dude.
They all have a conceit that I felt compelled to check out. And it's like, oh, hey, splitting up your party so is that you could do the Fork Tower. And then that culminating with, like a quick little cutscene in terms of understanding the importance of teamwork.
Which gives you really good reward for going through the trouble of doing it and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like, which is 2 endgame spells that are very good. Yeah, that is one of, like, 3 places I died going through the rest of the game, and it was because I didn't optimize the magic side particularly good. So once I tightened that up, got through there.
So we have a, like, FF9 style, one party goes to the magic place, one party goes to the physical damage place?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And then, let's see, there is I think it's in the Phoenix Tower, there's a series of magic pots you can fight.
Yeah.
That gets you the Phoenix Summon, which is very, very, very good. So what I wound up doing was taking my non-Blue Mage characters and setting them all to Berserker for those fights specifically, because each one of those pots will drop like 100 AP. And that's like a 500 AP job to finish, and the net effect of it is like basically your strength and hit points are like permanently enhanced, like real big wise. So the downside is Berserker's like a shit class to use, like in all other circumstances. But those pots are kind of like mechanics exercises to fight, so it didn't particularly matter. So
I wasted 2 elixirs just to see what it gave me.
Oh my god, right, you have to feed them elixirs. I went through, I think I had 1 elixir when I got out of Phoenix Tower, which I feel like the success rate on feeding those things elixirs was not great.
It's 33%. I had to Google it.
Yeah, I was like, you are a greedy little shit. Like, you do not need all of these.
So wait.
The magic pot, you said that you get 100 AP. When you master a job, does it give you some base stat boost forever?
Yeah.
Even if you're not equipped with the job?
To freelancer, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
some of them more than others. I mean, if you master, like, I think, no, it's the Black Mage. It's a permanent buff of plus 30% to your MP.
Yeah, as a passive ability. So you get all their passives in addition to, like, flat stat buffs and none of the penalties.
Which, in theory, is a reason for you when you reach the final boss. Everyone in your party, in theory, could be a freelancer with just these crazy, ridiculous buffs. But
I mean, that's probably the only way you could get through the final boss, really. Outside of... We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. But just some really cool world building, different environments. I mean, so, Gino, you've never done all of this stuff? Like...
No.
What's your...
Wow. How does it work for me?
Yeah.
So for me, what I've done is go to the pyramid, beat Melusion, the boss at the end of it, get the lithograph, go straight to the Mirage Village.
Buy some of the cool stuff there.
Yeah, buy some of this cool stuff there. The Mirage Village is pretty interesting because it's a town that was trapped in the void.
For thousands of years.
Yeah, so all the people there are really out of sync with the rest of the world. And then, what is the thing that triggers... You just go to Tycoon, and there's the way to get into the end zone or the rift, and I just go straight to the rift.
Yeah, that's just bonkers crazy to me. I thought that all the optional locations just were cool. I mean... You just learn a lot about the world. You learn a lot about these characters. Like, every character, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but I'm pretty sure, like, every character gets a vignette, like, their own vignette. Like, Krill, for multiple times, has, like, these moments of doubt where she then, has a quick little moment where Galoof communicates to her, like, which is later reinforced in the final moments of the game, but it's fine. It's fun to have those moments in between to where it feels like there's an organic relationship there.
Yeah.
So wait, Gino, you don't even transform the airship into a submarine to where it can, like, transform?
Nope.
God, that is... I can't... You've done it before, though, right?
Not in, like, a decade plus.
It's... Man, I understand you already like this game because you're enthused by its mechanics, but I can't imagine not doing at least re-encountering, like, Sid and Mid and having them transform the airship to where it can, like, become a submarine and a ship.
Yeah, and
it plays the best as that castle's burning down music. It plays that as they're building it in, like, this really fast forwarded vignette that's kind of like a funny callback.
That's awesome.
But like, there's a quick little moment, like, Krill and Mid have this, like, quick little moment where they're, like, talking about needing to appreciate your grandparents because any day they can die. Like, man, yeah, there's some cool stuff in these moments, and so I mean, I did everything. I did
the submarine. You can go get the mime job. You can get the job crystal that you couldn't get to before.
Yeah. I loved Go-Go. I thought Go-Go was almost as cool as Gilgamesh just because, like, I love the mechanic of beating him the solution is to do nothing. Like, and there are even boss battles where there's interesting mechanics that kind of, like, preempt you or, like, front load, like, certain things that you kind of have to wrap your mind around in the late game of the, When you go to the Great Sea Trench after the Dwarven Village, you fight a trio of people, and they do the mechanic that later bosses do, where unless you knock all of them out all at once, they revive each other. But yeah, I really this was for me at the very least.
And I think it's worth calling out. Like, all of this stuff is optional. You can totally go straight from the pyramids straight to the end game.
Yeah, it's a real Chrono Trigger mechanic. Wait, did this come out before or after Chrono Trigger?
3 years before.
Wow. So maybe this was like they kind of played around with the idea in this game and then later doubled down on that idea of you could totally just fight the boss right from the get-go.
Yeah, like I've never gotten... Actually, I've gotten the legendary weapons once. I think when I played the GBA version of this game, I got the legendary weapons. But I've never... Not in, like, 10 years, again, have I gotten the legendary weapons. How are the legendary weapons? They good?
It depends on what you've built for your classes, because like half of them are, let's say, like really, really good swords and really, really good, katanas, and then half of them are here's a bell,
For the
like,
Geomancer.
yeah, here's the best harp in the game. That's like
I wish that I'm glad you mentioned
you
it,
could
Jeff.
plausibly
I wish
go
that there
through
were
that.
more classes represented with these weapons, because there are some that are just for one specific class, and then there are others that kind of like are a catch-all from multiple classes, but you only get one catch-all or two catch-alls.
Yeah, like you could plausibly finish that pyramid, go into the sealed castle, and get like the 3 weapons that are like going to be very useful for you, and not need to engage with that system again, and you would be totally fine. And which I think just speaks to the open-ended, like the faith that the developers put in individual players to find their own fun in the end game of this game.
Yep.
Yeah, they're so I wound up using like maybe 5 of the things in there, and then I wound up just getting the rest of them to do it. And there's not necessarily like a narrative or mechanical reward for finishing those beyond getting to see more of the game, which I guess to talk about it. So there's this pyramid dungeon we've been talking about. There is a dungeon behind a waterfall. There is a dungeon that is in a sort of lava cave underwater. And I forget the 4th one. All of these are remarkably straightforward, like sort of linear path dungeons, which sounds like some sort of indictment, but I'm coming off of Final Fantasy II, and I just finished playing Dragon Quest II. And holy shit, like you can sort of come to appreciate like dungeons that don't waste your time.
Yeah. Not every dungeon needs to have a lava floor and hidden floors or teleport rooms, monster closets,
or just
sometimes
like get from
enemies.
one corner to another, but it's a maze, and you've got like nightmare sort of shit. The only other times I died in this game were in dungeons where, so I had my dual wield character with a blood sword sometimes, and I'd find up with an undead enemy, and that would wind up knocking my dual wield rapid attack character out because they would just die.
Teach you.
Yeah, and then my party would get wiped pretty quick after that. So I'd be like, oh, just take the blood sword off. Then I was fine. So
I made a mistake. One mistake I made. Apparently, there's the waterfall dungeon, right? If you go into that waterfall dungeon with the chocobo, it's completely different than if you walk into it. Because if you walk into it with the chocobo, you get this thing called the magical lamp. I did not know what the magical lamp was. I thought it was a required part of the story because, again, I'm playing this game blind.
Is this the FF8 magical lamp? Do you summon Diabolos?
No, you don't. God, I wish, Gino, I wish you were right. So there are different parts of the world where you can charge up this lamp. And I spent, I want to say, 3 or 4 hours just, like, checking every part of the world, seeing if I could charge up this lamp. And you use that lamp, and I summoned Eggman.
Oh.
Which is a summon that does absolutely nothing.
This sounds somewhat familiar. What?
He's a giant egg with arms and legs, and he basically is like, I'm going to save the day, and then his attack misses because he's useless.
What?
Yeah.
Have you never seen Eggman?
Yeah,
I mean, I've played Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, turns that flicky bird into a robot, and then
just Google Eggman Final Fantasy V. That's what I got.
Jim Carrey's in this game?
Turn safe search off, Gino, as you do this.
No, thank you.
No, yeah, there are weird moments in this game where it's like, what do I do next?
He's a secret summon related to the magic lamp. Have
you never seen this?
No. Once Chocobo has been summoned 20 times, Eggman will be summoned instead until the magic lamp is recharged.
And so basically you lose a summon. Well, it's not that big of a deal because Chocobo's useless, but yeah.
Wild. Okay.
So, I mean, there are a couple of other moments that are really interesting and fun, but basically at a certain point, the game just says, hey, why don't you go into one of these places, like one of those portals? I think you have to use the one in Tycoon.
Yes. I've gotten the magic lamp before when I was playing through this game because I didn't have a summoner, but the magic lamp lets you summon specific summon. It's basically a decreasing level of power every summon. So it gives you a single use of these summons that I didn't have access to. And if you use it, like some of them are one-hit kills. So like Odin's Zantetsuken can kill some things. Golem's Earthen Wall can protect your squad. And then like Remora even can do some stuff. So it allowed me to cheese some bosses that I would not have been able to cheese otherwise. That's why the magic lamp is familiar. I remember doing this just for speedrunning. Cool. Well, once you go to the end zone, it's the end zone in my version of the game. It's the interdimensional rift for y'all, I think.
Yeah.
Once you go there, it's kind of almost an Ultimisia's castle sort of place where you're in this place outside of space and time, and you are kind of moving between these different areas that seem to have very little physical relation to each other. So, like, the first area is a desert, and then after you go through the desert, you go to a frozen version of the Mirage Village where all of the villagers are frozen in place and you can't talk to them. Then you end up in some woods that are kind of crazily laid out. And it's basically a boss rush from here on out. First boss is the wood sprite. She's all about magic. The way you cheese her is by casting Berserk on her. You can do that by creating Bacchus's wine, which is one of the chemist's mixes, and then she'll use physical attacks instead of spells. And she's not very powerful.
Yeah, you can also just hit her with swords.
Yeah, you can also just hit her with swords.
Yeah.
Next section...
My input for the rest of this is like, just rapid fire.
Hit him with swords, yeah.
Sorry.
You can fight Omega Weapon here, too. It's the super enemy in this game, very difficult, or one of the super enemies, I should say. You can also just avoid it. You can walk past this robot, and if you don't run into it, it's way easier to finish the game, because he's very strong.
Yeah, I sure fucking did.
The next boss is Apprender. I don't remember this one. What is your deal?
Do we want to talk about how I made some mistakes?
Sure.
Yeah, tell us about your mistakes.
Right. So, boy. All right. First off, I want to say that this last, like, all of the times you go to the end zone, like the interdimensional rift, I thought that, like, the fact the world changes, you revisit former environments, and the music is great. I thought all of that side of things was perfect. It was awesome. It was great. Unfortunately, this is around the time when I realized I was critically underleveled, and I had not spec'd my characters in a way to where I could do stuff like Gino, where it's like I can just use math, or I could just use mix, or I could just use all of these wonderful abilities to just kill these characters in one go. Couldn't do that. I also only would have like these weird like fiddler crabs where one would have the quick hit ability, the other would have dual cast, and sometimes they were overlapping to where it's like, I should have distributed this evenly across my party rather than one character has everything. So it's around this point of the game when I really had a miserable time. I mean, the last levels here, if you don't know what the fuck you're doing, are just pure, unadulterated misery. Now, luckily, a lot of these treasure chests have some pretty useful items. There are a lot of elixirs to pick up. You get a lot of dark matter, which makes your chemist incredibly powerful. But at the end of the day, I was able to get through the first two parts of the interdimensional rift. The point when I realized that something bad had happened, that, oh my God, something is very, very wrong, was when I tried to beat, I think, Necrophobe, his barrier system and that sort of thing. He was just constantly, like, killing my character with ease. That was the point. I got through most of these dungeons, you know, running away here and there, but not all the time. When I got to Necrophobe, and I realized, oh, I can just use break on these little things and they'd go away, but I had a hard time. Now, I've done a lot for this podcast series. I've done a lot. So when I finally beat Necrophobe and attempted to do X-Death, I would say I was level 35 to 36.
It's a little low.
Yeah, it's a little low. Now, to my defense, as I've said in the Discord, I got through the rest of this game kind of cheesing bosses. I think the consequence of being able to cheese some of these bosses is that there are sometimes no real references or built-in boss confrontations. You know, in CRPGs, we use a term called gear check, where it's just a friendly reminder throughout the game, throughout the major acts, that you need to be a certain level before you continue. And because I would cheese some of those gear checks, I did not know until the very last level and the very last boss confrontation that I was in a bad way. Like I said, I've done a lot for this podcast. I've done a lot for my blog series. I've done a lot for all of our wonderful audience members. I want to say, and this was painful, this might be one of the most painful things that I've done, when I realized that I could not beat Neo X-Death, because he would just cast that one, what is it? Almagia or something like that, and it would just wipe the entire party in one go, even
Grand
with
Cross.
protect. Yeah, one of those attacks, like everyone would die. I had to make an audible. I could either load up a save before this final dungeon system, or I could load up a save before the X-Death battle. Now, unfortunately, the very last part of the interdimensional rift, X-Death's dimension, if you'll just kind of humor my histrionics there. All of the random encounters there don't reward XP. I needed XP, not APB. Or AP. So I had to go all the way back to that freaking castle and find a nice place where I could get some XP, which was painful. It was not an easy thing.
Samurai and ninjas.
So I think I got to a point to where there was the save point that was guarded by Azulmagia.
Yeah.
And I got to that save point where I could just use cottages and tents to restore my HP and MP. And then go to the part where you, like, summon the staircase and you just... So I can tell you from experience that all of the enemies at that castle are very susceptible to Leviathan. You can sweep him if you boost your elemental affinity to whatever Leviathan is. Water. I don't care.
Water.
So I spent 4 to 5 hours power grinding on the final level of this game. And it was not good. It was not a good experience. I would say it's maybe a top 5 bad thing that I've done. I think, you know, certainly still up there is me taking the time to try and fight War Mech or War Machine in Final Fantasy 1. That was stupid.
That sure was.
And Final Fantasy 13 still takes the cake. The entire last level in that game is a giant insult. I think Gino and I still would argue that's the closest we've ever gotten to needing to record a podcast for a Final Fantasy game where both of us might not have made it through the game.
Yeah, and I think you did too much Grand Pulse.
Yeah.
You should have not done any.
Shouldn't have done any, but that last
You're both
level
braver
in
than me
Final-
because I got to Grand Pulse and turned it off, and I haven't touched the game since, and it's been
Good
about
call.
4 years.
But no, there was that weird spot, and Gino can back me up. The closest we've ever gotten to where one of us was not able to finish a game might be Final Fantasy 13, to where we reached that final level, and you and I both realized, oh god, all these guys just cast this random bullshit, and this last battle against Barthantelis is the worst. Just cast death, and we're all gone. That's the closest I think we've ever gotten to not being able to finish a game.
Just dooms everyone. Yeah,
Dooms.
The worst Final Fantasy. We'll get to 13. 13 will get brought up soon.
But
I will say
this
when it
was
comes
close.
to
I literally almost got to the point to where I didn't think I could finish this game.
Did you look up the ways to? So Neo X Death is an interesting fight because it's 4 segments that each have 1/4 of Neo X Death's HP, and each of the segments has different elemental and status weaknesses. So one segment is weak to stone, and if you cast Break on it, it will die immediately. One of them is vulnerable to instant death, and that will wipe out that segment too. So you can take out 2 of the segments, and I believe each segment has its own ATB meter. So if you can take them out, it will cause the other segments to use more powerful attacks, but you will not be getting attacked as frequently. So that's how I usually do this fight. I start by killing 2 segments and then wailing on the other 2 as quickly as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Well, I just took Jeff's advice, which is, hey, why don't you make everyone a mime and just spam Bahamut unstop?
That'll do it. That's
work.
another way to do it, because Neo X Death kicks up more powerful attacks the more segments are dead. If you can just deal the same amount of damage to all of the segments, it'll stay using the weaker attacks, but then, one of your attacks will just kill all 4 segments all at once.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
that was my blue stroke, red stroke, black mage was my mimic at that point in the game. So to maybe back up, so there's a walk up to this end boss, obviously. ZP mentioned Azul Magia.
Yeah.
So optional boss.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to fight this dude.
I never fought him.
Yeah, if you took middle school Spanish, Azul Magia, Blue Magic, I was like, start fighting this dude. I have my blue stroke red mage out, and I'm like, okay, let's get Mighty Guard up. And I went, yeah, Azul Magia learned Mighty Guard, and then casted it on himself. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. So I was like, oh, he just does blue magic. There's a blue magic spell just called Self-Destruct.
Yeah.
So if you cast Self-Destruct, it'll kill your blue mage, but then he will learn Self-Destruct, and then will cast Self-Destruct on himself and just kill himself.
Yeah,
and the boss fight's over. So it was like a 4-round fight. That's kind of he was also a reasonably hard boss if you wanted to fight him like a normal person. But it's cheesable. It was clever.
It's certainly cheesable.
And there's
It
a
made me
bunch of
laugh.
bosses like that.
Yeah.
Apprehender is the kind of upgraded version of Biblios, and it's still weak to fire because it's a book.
Yeah.
Azul Magia, you can self-destruct. Catastrophe, I believe, is weak to stone, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Or, yeah. Oh, no, it always uses Earthshaker. That's all it does. And so if you cast Float on all of your characters, it won't do anything to you.
But I mean, all of these bosses leading up to X-Death, I figured out kind of this is how I cheese it. And then you get to Neo X-Death, and yeah, sure, there may be, like you said, Gino, there's maybe 1 or 2 parts that you can immediately cheese, but there's still maybe 1 or 2 parts that you have to treat very seriously because they will fuck you up pretty quickly.
Halicarnassus, you can cast Carbuncle on yourself and Reflect because Halicarnassus uses magic. Twintania is weak to stone, I think, and you can just one-shot it. You can fight Gilgamesh again, and Gilgamesh, joins your squad, which is cool.
It's great. It's great. I do appreciate all the storytelling done in this last couple of levels. I mean, if we want to talk about it. I mean, it is... I know you talked about it earlier, but it is quaint. It is fun to go back to these locations that you remember from the past and they still kind of maintain the kind of same little conceits to each of these levels.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly like that. The problem is that, Neo X-Death is no joke.
Yeah, and Necrophobe, when you fight Necrophobe, if you fight it, because that's another optional battle, eventually, if you fight Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh will show up and take out Necrophobe for you. Kind of a foreshadowing for the callback from Final Fantasy VIII with the Cypher fight. this also is a level where you're kind of in this place outside of time, and by the end of it, you end up in a crystal world. And are all the enemies crystal versions of the Four Fiends at the end of this, or do you just fight crystals? I think you fight crystals.
You fight a little mixture of both. I mean, you fight the other bosses, but I mean, yeah, it's all of the former bosses, which is why it was really frustrating for me when I realized it was under-leveled that, oh, these guys aren't giving experience points. They're just giving their bosses, so they're only going to give AP points. So I had to leave out. I had to duck out the entire level and go to the previous one. And you can't use teleport. You can't use teleport in the interdimensional rift, which was a bummer. Which was a real big bummer for me when I realized I made mistakes.
You got to walk back. So once you defeat Neo X-Death, it's interesting because the characters that die in the interdimensional rift are treated as dead for real in the final cutscene. If you lose anyone, they're gone. And any of the stuff that would have happened to them in the final cutscene doesn't. Like, people are just sad instead of seeing them. Like, if Krill dies, she doesn't go to the Moogle forest. Like, the Moogles are just trying to move on without their friend. Bartz can die, and then you don't see Boko and Boko's kids with Bartz. It's interesting to see that this game has actually, I guess, a bunch of different endings. Or a pretty modular ending system.
I loved it. I actually think that there's a benefit to having at least one character die because you have, like, the other characters that survive kind of reminisce about them, and you kind of get a best hits compilation of, like, a vignetted best hits compilation of what they contributed to the story.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. I had Krill and Bartz die. The only people who survived were Lena and Ferris.
And Salsa.
Ferris. And it was cool to see them kind of like reach that final moment where they are sad, like deeply sad. And the moment that you have, if there is someone who dies, where like the spirit of Galoof transports them, I kind of feel pretty strongly in saying that that moment alone is better than what you get if everyone survives. And it's like, shuck, gee willikers, we're all happy now. Like, that moment of, like, that last moment with Galoof, I think is far more impactful than... So what I'm saying is have someone die in that battle. It's better.
It is. I think this is the only Final Fantasy game, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the only one where there are consequences in the end game for your mistakes. There are costs to the battle that you're waging. And this is really a game about... kind of an intergenerational fight and the passing of the torch.
Yeah.
It's really an intergenerational game. We get Sid Previa and Mid Previa, a grandfather and a grandson working together on these sciences. We've got Galoof and Krill. Galoof passes away, but also Butts is Dorgan's son, who's a member of the Dawn Warriors. All of the Dawn Warriors you meet, and they eventually fall in the battle against X-Death. And you summon their essence, basically, to fight X-Death in the end. So we get all of these kind of heroes before you, passing on their powers. And it literally, in the mechanics of the game, the way that you get the jobs that you get is by acquiring the memories of warriors past. And you're just kind of emulating them and growing in their shoes. So I like that the game manages to blend its story and its mechanics in this way. All the characters are basically ciphers that are sponges. They just absorb all the information and skills of the people who came before them. And by compounding on that skill and eventually mastering it. And it's interesting that by the end of the game, the correct way or the most powerful way to play is to have all of your characters be freelancers. So they start as blank slates with no abilities of any kind as freelancers. And then learn all of these jobs. They have all these experiences. They master all of these skills. And then by the end of it, you go back to the way you were at the beginning, and you can take all of those skills that you acquired over the course of the game and hybridize them in ways that you otherwise can't, right? And so you're much more powerful as a freelancer than you were even with the most powerful of jobs. It's a nice narrative and mechanical blending in this game that's really light fare for the most part. It's not explicitly making a lot of these arguments until the very end, when it becomes clear that this game is actually working a little bit in some heady stuff. Especially for something that feels so high adventure.
I also thought that the moments where, like, the previous Dawn Warriors are the ones that kind of, like, that make the ability for you to do the death blow against X-Death was really cool. And, I mean, they find a way to bring everyone, even Lena and Ferris's dad, into the fold. And that kind of moment that you have after you beat Neo X-Death, and there's a quick little speech, in the void. Those moments are great. But it was also kind of weird to, like, look at these moments and be like, man, where was this, like, 5 hours ago?
It's something. This game just gives you moment-to-moment fun and just jaunt and joy. And at the end of it, it's like, hey, remember all those people you saw and all those fun experiences you had? They were given to you because of this generation before you, and now you're going to take all of it into this fight, and you're going to fight for those people that you met.
Yeah.
And you're going to do what needs to be done. And some of you might not even make it. But we need to preserve this world because it's worth saving. And I actually like that it's not so heavy-handed. It doesn't ruminate. If the game's going to be this punchy and this short, like compared to some of the other Final Fantasy games we've played, it's actually a pretty tight 20 hours, I feel like, compared to the other ones. You can do more if you want to level up your characters and make them super powerful. But I don't think you have to say the game's themes over and over and over again or demonstrate them over and over and over again to have them be poignant, as long as you're willing to execute when the time comes. And I think that those final cutscenes, the final battle, manages to bring it all home and makes these themes salient in a way that they weren't leading up to that moment. I didn't expect the ending of this game to affect me the way it did, and I think it's a tribute to the writing that it all comes together at the end instead of feeling like it's slapdash. I don't know if y'all felt the same way, but it felt like the natural conclusion despite the tonal difference from much of the game before it.
Yeah, like the ending was surprisingly poignant. It played upon, again, if you like stuck around and did all of the more or less optional get all the weapons and watch all these sort of vignettes that play out as you do that stuff, like brought all of that content back in and made that handoff feel like all the more rewarding because you like did it basically, like which isn't to like belittle if you like do the, let's say, minimum amount to get through this game. But yeah, it worked. It kind of reminded me of, in tone, if not in specific content, the way that Final Fantasy 15 ended, which is sort of on a similar note, but just played so much less deftly, I guess. Like, felt very unearned. This one felt so much more earned while playing such a similar note. Yeah, it was nice to play one of these games, a lengthy JRPG that, like, lives within its means, like, to just, like, a maximal effect. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It was a very nicely tied bow on a very neatly made present. I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the ending of a Final Fantasy game managed to raise my estimation of a game, which is like kind of impressive for this series.
Yeah, usually the final cutscene makes the game fall apart, or it tries to put together these themes that just make no sense. And I think this one, they brought it home, really.
Yeah, or like like the ending of 12, which is something I haven't played, or like Final Fantasy 1's just kind of like, 2's like too little too late, and like 7's like pretty successful. But yeah, like this one is just like, no, just confident. Like confident in itself, doesn't need to, like,
even like the part where like the titular bad guy is not the titular bad guy and transforms into like another thing is like relatively like demure compared to like it was actually space god Hitler or like whatever. It's just like, oh, it's a kind of a scarier sort of this wasn't even my final form version of that thing. Yeah, I liked it. It made me very happy.
Can I just say something real quick?
Go ahead.
I think something that this game somewhat reminded me of is the games that I've enjoyed the most in the Final Fantasy franchise. We talk about kind of like recurring tropes and idioms. The games I have enjoyed the most in the Final Fantasy franchise have a very candid relationship with the idea of death, and that it's not something to be ashamed of. It's just something that you have to accept. And that's something that I think this game does really well. I mean, we talk about Final Fantasy IX, the themes of death or coming to terms with death. Final Fantasy X even does it really well. But this game has this very organic relationship with this sense of the afterlife and, you know, the basic parts of Final Fantasy in a way that kind of warmed me during a time when I desperately needed it. It was something. It sure was something. And, you know, I make no qualms about it. I'm kind of glad that this is kind of an aberration in terms of mechanics, but in terms of storytelling, I feel like there's something that the series could go back to in terms of just making it simple, just making it straightforward, just making it like not necessarily I'm okay with the melodrama aspects to a certain extent, but like in terms of storytelling, I feel like with this franchise as creatively bankrupt as it is right now, like if you want to go to your roots, don't just go back to the mechanics of Final Fantasy. Go back to what made these stories so much more impactful. Because, I mean, when we played 13, they had all of the resources. And, you know, Jeff's always reminded us that they have all of the resources in 15. And yet they get so very little out of it. This game has not a lot of resources, and it gets so much out of it. Just because it feels genuine.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
an editorial thing, really. Like all the strongest parts of 15, which is a thing that's come up in the Deep Listens Discord, if you're interested in joining, patreon.com/deeplisten.
Jeff does not like 15, in case you're wondering.
I'm disappointed by 15 because, like, it's got really strong points. Like, all the stuff around, the back of napkin version of the game. A prince is deposed. He goes to restore his kingdom with 3 male peers, during which they enjoy male peer bonding based on friendship and like earnestness. And it's like, that should be gold. Like, that's good. And like those parts of the game are pretty good. And the combat system, I don't love it, but you can sort of kludge along and it's okay. But it stretches itself so thin and loses its goddamn way. And by the end of it, it's just this agonizing, like, hold down X while the prince flies around and fights like a guy in a fedora for 20 minutes. It's like, what happened? Where did we go? And it's like, oh, it's because it took 10 years to make. Like, they punched out Final Fantasy V, granted on a much smaller scale, written in assembly by like a dozen people, in a year and change.
And then they went on to make Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah.
Also in about a year and a half, at most 2 years.
Yeah.
Which just blows my goddamn mind.
Like, I think it's an editorial thing. Like, someone needs, like, a project management problem. Like, someone needs to step in, and I feel like this happens at the tail end of these games now and says, like, we need to scope this. You've had 8 years. We have to release a product. Like, 2 years ago.
It's the crush of assets. They could turn out assets pretty quickly back then because the fidelity was low. Now it takes years and years and years to even make the assets, and so you have to make it work. You have to make the story bigger. You need to
and
have
in
all
that
these
time
hooks.
you've got someone to more being like, what if they did this while they were on the journey? Well, what if there was a section like why haven't we implemented fishing? Like,
Great point.
anyway, the scope, editorial issues. Yeah, Final Fantasy V is good.
So now let's figure out exactly how good, because it's time to put it on the list. Again, we have been ranking all of the Final Fantasy games. Let us go to the list now, in case people have forgotten.
Hey, Gino, where is this list located, if it is located on the World Wide Web?
It's in my hand.
Okay. The list is a paper list that lives on your desk. Okay.
It's a paper list, but you can, I think I usually put it on the podcast. Maybe I'll put it on the podcast description. You can go to our Discord, and it's there. We've got, at the top of the list, Final Fantasy IX, the best Final Fantasy game. Then 10, followed by 7, 8, 12, the trading card game, 1, 10, 2. There's a significant precipitous
We
drop-off.
never defined where we stop recommending these games. So after we rank this game, we should probably set this aside.
I would say either before or after 1 is where we do not recommend.
I think I might have warmed up to 10-2, to be perfectly honest.
10-2? Okay.
There are some moments.
We can have an airing of grievances at the end of the year and reconsider this.
Okay. Yep.
Then The Spirits Within the movie, followed by Mobius, 10-2 Last Mission, Final Fantasy II, and then followed forever and always by the worst Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy XIII.
All right, so we usually start at the bottom and then work our way to the top.
Now, we can do that. We can work up instead of down. That's fine. Is Final Fantasy V better than Final Fantasy XIII? Yes.
Yeah. No
It's better than
disagreement
2.
there.
Yes.
Yes. 10-2 Last Mission.
Yes.
Mobius. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Well, just real quick, because it breaks my heart to say this. At the end of June 2020, Mobius Final Fantasy's servers will be terminated and this game will be dead.
Pour one out.
90
I
hours
should
of my life into that game and it's about to die.
I should install that thing and mess with it before it's dead.
Yeah.
You're fine.
I have no
No.
scope. Okay, yeah. Better than Mobius.
The Spirits Within the movie.
Definitely.
Yes, it's better than that. 10-2.
Yeah.
Kind of spiritually, I think the closest game
relate,
to Final Fantasy V. But I think 5's better. Final Fantasy 1.
Better.
Yeah, it's better.
Better. The trading card game.
It's probably better.
Better.
I have strong feelings for the trading card game, but I'm fine with a video game being better than it. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
12.
I think it's better than 12. I actually like the mechanics of 12 more than 5. That's a personal preference, just because I think the Zodiac Age edition doesn't get enough respect. But at the same time, and I think we've said this before, 12 is probably the last truly great Final Fantasy game, regardless how you feel about its mechanics. It's just, in terms of being the whole picture, in terms of storytelling and bravado and like that honesty, that emotional honesty, it's kind of the last of those. But I'm willing, even if I preferred playing 12 to 5, I'm willing to say that 5 is better than 12.
Yeah, I'd rather play a punchy 20 to 30 hour game than 12. I will say, for the record, I bought the Switch version of that game earlier last week after learning that there is a respec and Gambit macro option in that version. That they did not backport to the PC or the PlayStation 4.
No, they did not.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
Completely wild. Yeah, 5 over 12.
I agree. At 5, I think it's just the editing. 5 can be 20 hours if you want it to be. It can be 40, though I question how you get to 40. Maybe 30 hours if you want it to be. 12, you can't get it under 40, I don't think, even if you wanted to.
As someone who played Final Fantasy V out of pure mistakery and dickery on my part for 51 hours,
oh boy,
it's possible. It's possible.
Now we're up to 8.
Yeah, this is not
5 better than 8.
So here's the deal. I think Gino and I, well, at least me, I've really warmed up to 8 in a way that I did not think would happen, especially after our Extra Life thing where you and I raised a combined total of like $2,000.
Sure did.
All right. I think I like 8 the same way, in terms of storytelling, the same way I like a good, bad movie, like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie. And that's not why I enjoyed 5. But I gotta say, and I think this has come up multiple times, man, do I love playing 8. Man, do I just love playing that game.
But I love playing 5 too.
And I didn't like playing 5. I liked its little quaint storytelling.
So, is it better to have 8 where you can break the game immediately and then you don't have to worry about anything from then on unless you feel like it, or having 5 where you need to care about everything all the time, but there are way more mechanics that are relevant in every single battle?
It's a coin flip for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
this one's rough for me too, because 8, despite its numerous character flaws and the fact that I might like other games in the series better as I get older, probably remains my favorite, if only for the music. It was the one that I first really imprinted on when I got into the series that wasn't called Final Fantasy VI.
So here's what I will say. So it's 8 then 7, right?
8 then 7.
I will filibuster you if you try to put 5 above 7. I will just make that very clear. There's no goddamn way I'm going to let you put it above 7 just because of like pure history and like legacy, and like it's probably one of the most important games in my personal lifetime. One of.
Yes, I would say.
I think its ceiling is about here. I would not put this above 7 either.
I wouldn't either. I don't think any of us would. Well, we have all literally said we will not. So I personally skew 8 then 5 in terms of 9, 10, 7, 8, 5. Because Triple Triad is dope as hell. And that is not to be forgotten about. The music in 8 is better than 5, though 5 has solid music. And I think that 8, in its mechanics, gives you the freedom to do as much wild shit as you can in 5, but it does not force you to. Whereas 5, I think you can't get to the fun as quickly as you can in 8.
But at the same time, 5 manages to be a legitimately good story without... Like, I worry that are we not giving an Oscar to Tommy Wiseau's The Room? Are we not doing that? Because I don't know if I can. My conscience just does not let me do that.
8 is a crazy melodrama, I would say. It
falls flat on its face.
You're going to turn it on at 1 in the afternoon on a major network, and that's what 8's doing. I think that 5 is a lot more of a like Cartoon Network show, where it starts off as a fun, goofy thing, and you're like, oh, this is kind of fun, and then all of a sudden, like, ghosts of people's parents are showing up, and it's like, oh, damn, this show's kind of weird and fucked up.
So it's Avatar.
Yeah, it's like a like an Avatar or like a Steven Universe sort of deal, where you start off thinking that it's low stakes and fun and zany, and it maintains that, but then all of a sudden you're fighting against a galactic tree beast that's trying to end the world, and you need to defeat it through the power of friendship. And so I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
5 hangs with 8, but I can't. Yeah,
you can't go up
I'm
above
okay
that.
putting it below 8.
All right. So this is
to be
our
clear,
list.
Very good game, though.
Very good game. It's still on the recommendation list. So
I personally gave this a 5-star rating on my own Jeff scale because I found like no part of it to be particularly. Yeah. Whatever. It's great. Even the lesser music on the Game Boy Advance version of this game is phenomenal.
There's a reason why even people who have not played this game know that song, as Jeff put it once. The song. there's the song. It comes from this game, and people still listen to that song.
Which song is it?
For a reason. The
Battle on
Big
Big
Bridge.
Oh yeah, Battle of the Big.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
So
There you go, buddy.
I think when it comes down to it, 5 is a lot more straightforward than 8, both story and mechanically. And I think that simplicity, the fact that it has an editor and can be enjoyed so much more readily, like there's an entire generation of people who tried to play 8 and then bounced immediately off of it because the combat is so unintuitive.
Yeah.
All of the complaints, ZP, that you had of 5, like not understanding what you could draw from, not knowing which enemies had specific weaknesses that you could exploit, that's fine, but you can just, like, slam your characters into the opponent like Jeff did with Rapid Fire and Dual Wield, and you'll get through that game just fine. 8, you can totally just fuck yourself several different ways by overleveling your party or not understanding the draw system or not junctioning things properly.
Fair.
And then you just can't finish the game. I needed to give you multiple coaching sessions on how to play 8 to unfuck your playthrough of 8. Like literal, like get you on a call to explain how that game works. And I think that 5, just because of its straightforwardness and simplicity in a way, actually is the more elegant game. And for that reason, I argue it goes just above 8, but no higher. And I love 8. I love 8 a lot. Like, it's the one that I've played the most.
8 has characters.
I think this one does too, and I think there's, like, again, it's written on, like, a smaller scale.
All right.
But they're there.
But's Klausa. There's Galoof.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to dwell on it too much, as long as we can all agree that this is not going to go above 7.
No, it's not.
Not to totally, like, show my hand, but my knife's going to come out for 6. About that, I don't know if it's not coming out for 5. Knife is in sheath.
I thought you said you were preserving your knife for tactics.
Tactics is good too.
That's not a knife. That's like a big fucking gun. Or a bat.
So, where are we at? I think I go 5 then 8. ZP, where's your heart?
My heart says 8 then 5.
8 then 5. Jeff? You can go 8 then 5. I'm okay with either of these alignments. I think these games are very close.
It's nostalgia is doing this to me. So with apologies to Final Fantasy V, 8 goes above it.
That's fine with me, because I think we all agree it's better than 12.
Yeah, I think we're talking about, like, specifically, like, the top of this list is, like, the top flight stuff that the genre has almost ever produced. Like, everything to, I mean, what's right below 5 at this point is what? This list is 9, 10, 7, 5, 8, and then after that is what? Or 8,
so it's
5,
9, 10, 7, 8, 5, 12, the trading card game, and then 1. And I think the cutoff is probably, well, depending on how you feel about TCGs, like, I think that card game's really good and worth playing. But I think everything after the TCG is a, like, if you want to.
I think
I have sympathy for 1, but
I have sympathy for 10 too. Because if you want to talk about a game that's a lighthearted adventure that's just, happy to just be a fun adventure, that game is exactly that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've played so many of these games that I feel like are just too goddamn serious. They take themselves too seriously.
And then I think everything after 10-2 is a do not recommend. Well, the Spirits Within's fine, but like Mobius, no. 10-2 Last Mission, hell no. 2, nope. 13, break it. Just snap it in half. Convince one of your college dorm members to play it in your place.
I gotta say, man, I played a little bit more of 13-2. I think you two will be surprisingly positive about that game.
All right, so we now have our ranking.
Yeah.
The new rank is 9, then 10, then 7, then 8, then 5, then 12. The trading card game, 1, 10-2. The Spirits Within, Mobius, 10-2 Last Mission, 2, and then the worst Final Fantasy game, Forever in the Fires of Hell, where it belongs, is Final Fantasy 13. With that, now it's time to talk about which Final Fantasy game we will play next for the podcast. And wait, I have breaking
news. Where's the helicopter sound? Jeff, helicopter sounds.
I'm a helicopter. My name is Steve the Helicopter. I'm gonna fly over. Yeah, chugga 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 swoosh. Honk honk.
Okay.
Wee
ZP.
woo wee.
Gino, breaking news, Gino, breaking news.
Yes.
You're claiming that you're done with the Final Fantasy V experience. You're thinking that the story is complete.
Yes.
You would be wrong.
How? How could that be?
Because approximately, I think, 9, almost a decade or so after this game came out, and they didn't even translate it in English, Square Enix is like, you know what? We're trying to double down on us being this multimedia company. Why don't we adapt Final Fantasy V to an anime?
I would like to.
What?
I would like to submit some notes to what was just said to ZombiePie.
What?
Two notes. It's about 2 years after, and it is 100% originally in Japanese.
It came out. I remember the OVA being released in English.
Yes, it was.
Which I want to say, if you listen to the English dubbing of this thing, you will want to blow your brains out.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so I've seen this thing. I don't think either of you have seen this thing. There is a Final Fantasy V anime. It takes place, I believe, 2,000 or 5,000 years after the events of the game. All of the characters that you love and like about this game are fucking dead, and you're dealing with their grandchildren. It was made by a studio that did not play the game. I will warn you now, they did not play the game. I think they read a little, amicus brief about what the game was about, and they were like, yeah, we can work with this.
Oh, whoa. This studio was responsible for Cardcaptor Sakura.
Oh, damn.
Not only that, they made a film slightly before this called the anime adaptation of Metropolis, which I strongly recommend you watch.
Yeah, that thing's fucking cool.
It's super cool. Gina, have you seen the anime adaptation of Metropolis?
Nope.
So, watch that, please. It's on. I think it's one of those things where you have to get the disc version of Netflix. But watch that, please. I beg of you, watch that. It's a legitimately good movie. It's one of the greatest movies to come out in the early 2000s.
Maybe
anime, and then watch the Final Fantasy V anime. Which our viewers can join us in doing because the rights for this thing expired, and it's basically in the public domain.
Basically. So we will be watching the Final Fantasy V anime, which is, what's its subtitle?
The title is Final Fantasy, Legend of the Crystals. The sub and dub are both on the youtube.com. The channel is FF Anime.
So this also gives me an opportunity, Jeff. One of these days, we got to record a side podcast in which we watch the Tower of Draga anime.
No, we don't.
Yes,
No,
we do.
Yes, Thank you, listeners. Thank you, ZP.
Don't leave JR open on the wing.
Thank you, Jeff.
No problem. The helicopter chop. I got it taken off. Yeah, this is Jeff from the Disaster Zone in the Puget Sound. We'll see you soon. Toilet paper.
Thank you, listeners. Reminder, you can support the show, patreon.com/deeplistens. You can get in touch with the show, email, and tweet and stuff at deeplistenspod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, peace!